My prince consort is a traitor and rebel. I have died 7 times by his blade. I am a doomed princess of a fallen kingdom, yet I dared to defy fate and rewrite my destiny. After scheming through countless lifetimes, this time I aligned myself with his nemesis. From then on, I became the cat. And he became the mouse. Main text. After a long separation, my prince consort returned with a pregnant woman. Princess Yunyao is with child and cannot perform the formal greeting. This servant begs your forgiveness on her behalf. Zhuang Qiong, who had always glared at me with cold fury, now bowed low before me for the first time, all for a woman. I stared into his icy eyes, silent for a long moment before saying, "Your mother is dead." I wasn't joking. It was true. She had just closed her eyes. Still warm. Zhuang Qiong knelt on one knee, rigid as a clay figurine. His straight back trembled slightly, his expression a mask of suppressed anguish. He rose and strode away, leaving me standing in the chilly spring breeze. Yunyao followed behind him, glancing at me out of the corner of her eye as if I had stabbed Zhuang Qiong's terminally ill mother to death. Whatever. If there's blame to be had, it's all mine anyway. I've died 7 times already. I should have learned to let it go by now. This is the 8th cycle I've endured since being transported into this novel. I'm neither the purest female lead nor the saintly supporting character. In this 100 soft the Sonsword story, I'm merely a one-time appearance princess of Chu, a bit part extra, not even worthy of a name. Beauty on the outside, black heart within sums up my entire existence. Honestly, I'm speechless. Black heart. So beneath my ample bosom lies a lively, pulsing piece of bloody tofu. Is that it? Back in my bedroom, I collapsed onto the bed and fell asleep. Ying chattered incessantly by my ear, one moment scolding Zhuang Qiong for his audacity, the next reassuring me not to overthink things. She feared I'd receive another letter from Zhuang Qiong like yesterday's, only to collapse into darkness after reading it. Princess, it's already noon. What would you like to eat? I'll have the kitchen prepare it. I rolled over in bed, my voice devoid of emotion. I want to die. Preferably a complete death, vanishing into nothingness. In my past life, Zhuang Qiong had just sent me away with a cup of poisoned wine. The bitter taste of sorrow gnawing at my bones still lingered. Yet in this life, the moment I opened my eyes, I was sent back again. Heaven, did I desecrate your ancestors' graves? Is this how you play with me? True to her name, Ying was a whiny little thing. The moment I mentioned death, she collapsed onto the floor, wailing. If anyone deserves to die, it's the prince consort. Princess, let's return to the palace at once and petition His Majesty to sentence him to death. The Emperor cherishes you most. Useless. I've lived 7 lifetimes, except for the first 3, where I poured my heart out for Zhuang Qiong. Every subsequent life began with me scheming how to kill him the moment I opened my eyes. My dim-witted father, whenever I plotted mischief, would rush to dissuade me. The border is tense. Heads say, the court lacks capable men. Zhuang Qiong must not die. One must sacrifice the small self for the greater good. Well then, father, one moment you're incompetent and foolish, the next you're sacrificing your own kin for the greater good. This complete collapse of your persona truly makes me wonder, are you targeting me? As evening approached, Zhuang Qiong came to see me, implying he wanted to arrange lodging for Yunyao. Wherever you stay, she stays. What's there to arrange? Zhuang Qiong shot me a cold stare, his tightly pressed thin lips betraying a hint of ruthlessness. He said nothing, his expression so grim it seemed had suffered the gravest insult. I took a sip of tea and pondered. Oh, right at this moment, I was utterly and hopelessly in love with him, wishing I could chain him to my waist. Wherever I am, he must be now with Yunyao's growing belly. The thought made me burst out laughing. What? Is my bed too small for your amorous trysts? His brow furrowed deeply as he gently rebuked me. Princess, your usual lack of restraint is one thing, but now your language is unbecoming. Who corrupted you while I was away for a year? His words were laced with venom as his glare shot toward Ying. He blamed me for tarnishing propriety. But I only sneered coldly. It wasn't as if I hadn't seen such things before. Once, Zhuang Qiong and another nameless lady were passionately entwined on my bed when I happened to walk in. That lifetime, I was driven to my death by his very actions. Ying pathetically knelt on the floor, whimpering pitifully, pleading for the prince's mercy and claiming she had brought shame upon me. But this was my fault. Had I not been so subservient to Zhuang Qiong, had never have dared lord it over me like this. Ying, you are my handmaiden. Without my command, who dares punish you? Rise. I snatched the teacup and hurled it at Zhuang Qiong's feet, sending water and tea leaves splashing onto his shoes. General, this is the prince's residence, not a frontier battlefield. Must I seek your permission for every word I speak or deed I do? Zhuang Qiong prized cleanliness above all. Soiling his clothes and defying him today felt like courting death. His expression darkened but only for an instant. He swiftly regained his composure, his voice softening as he asked, "Your Highness is quite right. This servant overstepped. Yet seeing your grievances, perhaps we should discuss them. Let me understand my errors so I may correct them." What I dreaded most was his cold, unreadable stare. To me, it was like a blade suspended over my head, ready to fall at any moment. My resolve held for 2 seconds before snapping. Fear of Zhuang Qiong was etched into my DNA. I crumbled, but what could I do? Blame this man for being too ruthless. If he weren't ruthless, how could he dare be a rebel? I forced myself to remain calm, snorting with a mocking laugh. The general's achievements overshadow the sovereign. How could I dare harbor resentment? Beyond my courtyard, Miss Yunyao may reside wherever she pleases. Her term is advanced. She needs someone to attend to her. The general should go and stay with her. Once, I'd done everything in my power to keep him by my side. Yet even sharing a bed night after night, though we lay upon the same mattress, we drifted apart like two small boats adrift on the sea, tossed far apart by the waves. Even so, I often woke from dreams with a smile. Zhuang Qiong seemed slightly taken aback, likely not expecting me to let him go willingly. With a meaningful glance, he said, "Your Highness, Yun Yao and I are deeply grateful for your kindness." Throughout the entire mourning period, I stayed hidden away in the lake pavilion, engrossed in reading erotic novels. Life was quite thrilling. The artist's skill was extraordinary. Their vivid depictions made one's blood boil and body tremble with desire. At noon, I drifted into a daytime reverie. In the dream, two naked figures entwined, and as they tangled, the powerful man hoisted me up and executed a shoulder throw. My lack of intimate experience meant my erotic dreams transformed directly into gladiatorial combat. A princess reduced to a nun. I sighed. Ying. What do you think about me finding a male companion to play with? Ying. No answer came for a long while. Slowly opening my eyes, I saw Zhuang Qiong standing in the pavilion center. His expression fierce, ruthless, and tinged with hurt. Today is the 7th day since Mother's passing. The princess hasn't even offered a single stick of incense yet. Her head entrusted all funeral arrangements to Yun Yao. With her swollen belly, she navigated the corridors of power with the poise of a matriarch. What need was there for me to intrude? The late matriarch never favored this palace. Should I offer incense? She would surely choke on her pride. Zhuang Qiong's gaze turned icy. He approached me with a forced smile. The moment he sat down, I shifted my hips to move farther away. Today, the Marquis of Anping visited the estate, not seeing the princess. He assumed I had mistreated her and flew into a terrible rage. As he spoke, he edged closer to me. I shifted with his movement, sliding even farther away. The Marquis of Anping is my maternal grandfather, a formidable general in his youth. I smiled at Zhuang Qiong. So that's what this is about. The Marquis commands the Imperial Guard. But now that he's grown old and feeble, he's seeking a successor. Zhuang Qiong has always coveted control of the Imperial Guard. If he succeeds, it would add significant weight to his plans for rebellion and treason. Considering this, he feared provoking the Marquis of Anping's displeasure, so he sought me out to speak well of him. It was unfortunate, though Zhuang Qiong, as the male lead in the original story, lived a life of grand adventure and smooth sailing, there was one person who always made him look foolish. This man was named Zhou Yuanxuo, the third prince of the enemy kingdom. The moment this third Prince Zhou appeared, legions of readers defected to his side, hailing him as the most protagonist-like supporting character in history. Though Zhou Yuanxuo's screen time was limited, his mere presence always derailed Zhuang Qiong's schemes. Mad and treacherous, he was a ticking time bomb. It was Zhou who snatched the position of Imperial Guard commander from Zhuang Qiong. So who was it for? Zhuang Qiong narrowed his eyes at me, raising an eyebrow. Poor man. He didn't know his fate had long been written. Even more pitiful was Mech knowing I was merely an extra, knowing I could do nothing to change it. You needn't worry about your reputation. I'll explain to the Marquis of Anping myself. I am the sovereign. The old lady was my subject. Should I be expected to arrange her funeral rites? The capricious one is me. If anyone was wronged, it was you. As I offered this half-hearted evasion, Zhuang Qiong silently cornered me until my back pressed against the crimson pavilion pillar, leaving nowhere left to retreat. Seeing my discomfort, his expression lit up with satisfaction, like a cat that had caught a mouse. Brimming with pride, outside, they say the minister was driven from the prince's bedchamber and is losing favor. The youngest son of the chancellor's household has long admired the princess. He's likely waiting for the princess to dismiss the minister so he can move into the prince's residence. I instinctively tried to decipher his meaning. Did he want me to beg him back to bed? Hadn't he had enough of this marriage of convenience? I rose, unable to bear it any longer, cursing myself for being played like a fool. Your Excellency's influence is vast. Even if this palace wished to divorce you, His Majesty would never consent. Pursue your desires freely, no need to grovel before me, and cease disturbing my carefree existence. Death awaits us all eventually. For now, I seek only to revel in each day. I heard of a place in the city that cultivates male favorites for noble patrons. I sent Ying to investigate. She returned, clapping her hooves in delight, claiming to have found me a fallen immortal, a towering figure with broad shoulders and a sturdy build. I suspected either her taste was questionable or her lack of education showed. But this burly fallen immortal did pique my interest. After all, good health matters. On the day the fallen immortal arrived, fearing my withered flower might embarrass me, I steeled my resolve, closed my eyes, and swallowed a magic pill, all for the sake of the occasion. Ying cried out in alarm. The manor has been swarming with patrols, lately doubled in numbers. I wasn't even sure if I could get him in safely. And now you've gone and swallowed the potion. That good-for-nothing Ying was scared of Zhuang Qiong. Humph. I couldn't care less about him, even if he were the king of heaven himself. Fortunately, things went smoothly. Just as I was drifting off, Ying arrived with the men. She whispered to me, "Princess, you're in luck. He looks even more pleasing to the eye than the past few days." I lost all patience. I shoved her out the door and lunged at the blurry figure like a bully. Maybe the medicine was too strong. That night was a haze. I only remember getting too exhausted to keep going and trying to on the way, only for him to grab my wrist and pull me back, insisting I see it through, covering my flushed cheeks. I couldn't fathom how anyone dared treat me so rudely. Worse still, this man lay sound asleep beside me, having even snatched my blanket and pillow. I sneezed. Then Desidetto fit my brutal persona. I raised my hand and slapped the fallen immortal across the face. His brow twitched slightly as he slowly opened his eyes, muttering, "How dare you? How dare? Who dares? Me?" He must be dreaming. His irises were a pale shade, and now, bathed in the bright spring light, his eyes sparkled like they were dusted with gold powder. Moments later, he snapped back to awareness with a drawn-out "oh." Noticing my half-exposed body, he pulled me into his embrace and shamelessly declared, "The princess bed is a bit small, well, have to squeeze me. Damn it. Don't think your good looks give you the right to get cozy with me like this." I kicked out several times, sending him tumbling off the bed like he was riding a windfire wheel. The wild man glared at me, murderous intent in his eyes. He didn't back down just because I was a princess, a true man of iron will. "Awake." I snorted coldly, trying to look cool, but my pained expression betrayed me. "If you're awake, call the imperial physician quickly. I've strained my back." I kicked him with too much force, lying motionless on the bed, stiff as a desiccated corpse. My pathetic state amused the wild man standing by the bed. I heard him mutter under his breath, "Useless little thing." I intended to punish him severely, but he stood up completely naked, flaunting his 8-pack abs with abandon, successfully distracting me with his good looks. He dressed with deliberate slowness. From a distance, his posture was strikingly upright, hardly matching the description of broad-shouldered and thick-waisted. If anything, it was completely unrelated. As he left, he glanced at me and smirked condescendingly. "How utterly ridiculous. Your Highness, take good care of yourself. Your constitution isn't even as sturdy as my grandmother's." How could that be acceptable? Unable to strike him, I pounded the bed in fury. "How dare you mock this princess?" I demanded he stay and explain himself. But he ignored me, striding toward the door with long, swift steps. As he vanished from sight, I cried out in panic, "Don't forget to have Ying summon the imperial physician for me." Ah. I lay in bed for 3 days. Idleness made my appetite grow, and I suddenly craved the roses our jujubes from the western regions. I sent Ying to fetch some. After a long while, she returned empty-handed, gritting her teeth as she came to complain. It turned out Yin Yao craved sour foods during her pregnancy, so Zhuang Qiong had the kitchen send all the rose-flavored hawthorn berries to her. Incensed, Ying went to confront her for an explanation. Rose-flavored hawthorn is tribute fruit. How dare she eat it? After finishing them, she deliberately saved the pits, claiming it's a folk remedy from her hometown that drinking hawthorn pit soup brings noble offspring. She told me to bring them back to nourish the princess. What does she think she's doing? Isn't this mocking the princess for being childless? Ying sniffed, covering her swollen cheek as tears welled up in her eyes. She showed great disrespect to the princess. In my anger, I scolded her a few words. And then Lady Zhu attacked me. Madame Zhu was Zhuang Qiong's wet nurse, having lost his father in childhood and with his mother perpetually unwell. Zhuang Qiong was raised entirely by her and held her in deep respect. I stared at a plate of date pits. To say I wasn't angry would be a lie. The petty, backhanded squabbles between women were indeed cliched, yet infuriating enough. Ying helped me to a rocking chair under the eaves. I dismissed her to fetch Yin Yao. Madame Zhu followed Yin Yao everywhere, never leaving her side. It seemed Zhuang Qiong truly cared for her. "Your Highness, may you be blessed with gold." This was my first time summoning Yin Yao since she arrived at the mansion. I expected her to feel uneasy seeing me today, with Zhuang Qiong absent. Yet she stood tall and proud, clearly not giving me the time of day. She made a show of bowing, but Lady Zhu immediately grabbed her arm, exclaiming, "No, my lady, you are with child. The general specifically ordered that you be well looked after." This was using Zhuang Qiong to pressure me. I smiled and nodded. Since Lady Yin Yao is indisposed, then please, Lady Zhu, you may perform the honors in her stead. Madame Zhu's expression flickered. She hastily bent her knee in a perfunctory curtsy, but 2 matrons immediately stepped forward and forced her to kneel on the ground. Unless specifically exempted, one must perform the full courtesy when meeting the princess. "Madam, you are a woman of standing, how can you be unaware of such basic etiquette?" Madame Zhu retorted. "The princess herself once declared I was exempt from this duty. How can it be different now?" Before she could finish, I cut her off with a cold smile. How could I not remember such a thing? How could you forget? Princess. It was right after you married the general. You even said you'd serve me as your own mother. She craned her neck to confront me. These past years, because of Zhuang Qiong, I'd shown her endless forbearance, which had only emboldened her to become utterly presumptuous. Are you implying this palace is forgetful? That my word no longer holds weight? Holding a cup of hot tea, I regarded her expressionlessly. What is imperial dignity? Today, I would make her witness it firsthand. Madame Zhu froze under my stare. After a moment of shrinking back, she likely assumed I wouldn't dare harm her, and began to speak back defiantly once more. The attendants by my side were all seasoned palace veterans, adept at reading the situation. Without needing my command, they seized Madame Zhu and struck her hard on both sides until blood trickled from the corner of her mouth before stopping. Daring to talk back to the princess during her admonishment. This is high treason. I took a leisurely sip of tea, seeing Lady Zhu, her hair disheveled, glaring at me and about to say more. I ultimately held my tongue. I turned to look at Yin Yao with a smile. She finally realized I wasn't someone to be trifled with. Wringing her hands, her eyes brimming with tears, she stood flustered and at a loss. I said, I hear my lady intends to bestow the leftover date pits upon this princess to make medicinal soup. That's treating me like a beggar, expecting a princess to eat her leftovers. She hastily shook her head, casting pitiful glances at me. Princess. I personally peeled every single date pit. Yin Yao comes from humble origins and has little to offer you. I only wish to present a remedy to help you restore your health. I never imagined Miss Yingying would misunderstand. Her words flowed like water. I chuckled softly, reaching out to stroke her rounded belly. Startled, she tried to pull away, but was seized from behind. Yunyo's sleeve was flipped up, revealing a pair of black wings tattooed on her forearm. I appreciate your earnest intentions. I shall accept them. You are a blessed soul, and I wish to share in your fortune. Gazing at the sunlit courtyard, I signaled for the items to be brought out and placed within. A table, a Buddha statue, and a tray of jujube pits. The Buddha sat upon the table, the pits arranged before it. This display made Yin Yao's face pale. I've heard that if one kneels upon a jujube pit and prays earnestly, they may be blessed with a child. Today, you kneel upon this pit and pray for me. Would that not be doubly auspicious? What say you, Lady Yin Yao? Tears fell from Yin Yao's eyes like pearls from a fairy. A sight so pitiable even I felt moved, let alone Zhuang Qiong. A grown man. I asked in confusion. Why are you crying, my lady? You claimed your devotion to me was sincere. It seems you were deceiving me. My hand pressed lightly against her belly. A maid beside her shoved her shoulder and scolded. Praying for the princess is your blessing. Show gratitude. Yun Yao staggered, bit her lower lip, and walked toward the courtyard. Before long, Zhuang Qiong arrived. Having heard the news, Yun Yao certainly had some tricks up her sleeve. Upon seeing Zhuang Qiong, she didn't immediately burst into tears. Instead, she smiled, and as she smiled, tears began to fall. Good heavens! I thought. Good heavens! Zhuang Qiong scooped her up and demanded of me in a deep voice. Princess, might you explain this to your servant? At his command, Lady Zhu began her performance, weaving a tale that painted me and Yingying as a wicked mistress and a scheming servant. From start to finish, Zhuang Qiong never once sought my side of the story. For decades, he never cared whether I'd been wronged. If others said I was bad, then I was bad. Princess, your anger today stems solely from Yingying receiving a slap, regardless of right or wrong. Yingying remains a servant. Defying her superiors demands severe punishment. If she escapes punishment merely because of your favor, how can order ever be maintained in this household? His righteous indignation only amplified his authority. Once, I was captivated by this very sternness. Today, however, it only made me laugh. May I ask, General, Whose authority is being defied? My Ying must yield even to the daughter of an official. What noble status does Lady Yin possess? What standing does Lady Zhu have to dare touch my people? You tell me. Zhuang Qiong fell silent. I continued with a laugh. If you wish to establish rules, General, you choose my people as your sacrificial lambs. Have you ever held me in any regard? Whose rules are you setting? Just because the general's manor plaque hangs above the gate. Do you truly believe this place is yours to command? This residence was bestowed upon this palace by the emperor himself. It is the Princess Manor. Out of consideration for your pride, I allowed your plaque to be hung, only to have newcomers misunderstand, thinking that by currying favor with you, they could ride roughshod over this palace. The atmosphere grew uncomfortably cold. Zhuang Qiong stared at me and said, "The princess is not quite the same as before." I smiled. Yes, I was different. After all, the look in my eyes when I wanted to cut someone down couldn't be hidden. I still feared Zhuang Qiong, but I also knew he wouldn't dare truly harm me now. The Marquis of Anping and he shared military power equally, while the Marquis was alive. I could afford to be arrogant for a while longer. This time, I had one. For Yun Yao's sake. Zhuang Qiong knelt before me once more. In that moment, I knew I held his weakness in my grasp. Yet I felt no joy. Once, when I challenged him on matters of marital affection, I suffered defeat after defeat. Now, when I challenged him on matters of sovereign and subject, I could trample his dignity underfoot. Truly, it proved the old saying, deep affection often brings misfortune. The second time I met that wild man, I learned his name was Yuling, truly a name fitting his flamboyant nature. Seated on the daybed beneath the south window, he beamed like spring sunshine, handing me a rose through the window. This is a gift, though worth little, if your highness favors it. I'd gladly accept whatever token reward you deem fit. I snorted, took the flower, and flung it right into his face. How about I reward you with 2 slaps? What kind of trashy trinket does he bring to ask for a reward? I glared sideways at Yuelang. He gave a sly smile, then used the window frame to leap into the room, stirring up a gust of wind that tousled my hair. Is the princess in a foul mood today? He reached out to smooth my stray strands, plopping onto my imperial bed without so much as a greeting, then crossed his legs. If I were in a good mood, what use would I have for you? He smiled and countered. Does seeing me make you happy? Then Yuelang comes every day, so the princess can be happy every day. His face was like a flower butterfly, yet his eyes were earnest. My heart felt as if struck twice by a bowtie's hammer. I took it as a jest. But after that day, Yuelang truly came every single day, early or late, never absent. My life gradually filled with him. This day, however, Yuelang did not appear until noon. I gazed at the brushes, ink, paper, and inkstones prepared in the courtyard and ordered Ying. Send someone to guard the gate. If he shows up, beat him senseless and tell him never to come again. Why must he sneak around like a thief, climbing walls and jumping through windows? What does he want with me? What does he want with this princess mansion? My anger grew with each word, and I slammed my palms down on the table. The jingling of silver and jewels that followed was enough to drive anyone mad. Honestly, this is exhausting. Yuelang always appears and vanishes like a ghost. Yesterday, he made a rare promise to come paint my portrait this morning. I got up early to dress up, but he still hasn't shown up by this hour. A princess being stood up like this, it's hard not to speak harshly. Ying went out smiling to intercept him, but returned moments later, beaming and shouting. That little minx is finished. It turned out that during the morning court session, the Marquis of Anping had recommended a successor for the Imperial Guard commander to the Emperor, some young man whose name I'd never even heard before. But I knew, and Zhuang Qiong knew, that this man was Zhou Yuanshuo's confidant. When Zhuang Qiong returned home, he flew into a rage. Yet Yun Yao, oblivious to the danger, dared to approach him, using the child's clinginess as an excuse. She tried to coax some attention out of him, only to be severely reprimanded. I'll admit she's skilled at seducing men, but she underestimated Zhuang Qiong's nature. He wouldn't tolerate a woman becoming his stumbling block. And lately, Yun Yao had clearly wasted too much of his time. Hearing this news brought me no satisfaction. My own lover had vanished without a trace. I had no spare energy for gossiping about others. For the first time in my life, I entertained the thought of keeping a secret lover. I even pondered whether to have a pair of golden shackles made, to chain Yueling forever within these square courtyard walls. Without Yueling by my side that night, restless sleep eluded me. In my drowsy haze, a sudden chill swept through the room. The window had been opened. I called out, "Yueling." He always leapt through the window. To enter the door was nothing but a decoration. The more I thought about it, the angrier I grew. Closing my eyes, I muttered, "Tomorrow I'll have the south window sealed shut. If you dare stand me up again, don't ever come back." Someone entered the inner chamber, yet no response came. He stood before my bed, cold as ice, while the room's stillness slowly reawakened my senses. This man intended to kill me. I could feel his murderous intent as he scanned me. My hair stood on end. He lingered without moving, and I couldn't tell what he was observing. After a long, tense standoff, I slowly opened my eyes. My mind was filled with question marks as I stared wide-eyed at Yueling. "Are you out of your mind?" I snapped. "If you're coming, just call me. No need for all this nonsense." He chuckled softly. "My princess is quite bold. I see you weren't scared." I grabbed a pillow and smacked him with it. Death was nothing new to me. Own meal gone. Another to come. Pfft. No big deal. I made a decision just now, he said, slipping off his shoes and climbing onto the bed. He squeezed into my blankets, hogging half my pillow like a big dog wagging its tail, then pulled me tightly into his embrace. "What is it?" I asked lazily. He whispered in my ear with a smile. "I can't tell you." If he didn't want to say, I wouldn't press him. Just as I pretended not to see the fleeting murderous intent that had flashed across his face earlier. My life was as fleeting as this stew-like romance. I didn't want to pry and annoy him. After all, who knew if we'd meet again in the next life? Yueling tossed all the bedding I'd prepared for him onto the floor. I sighed. "You always snatch my blankets. Don't you find it cramped?" He replied. "This is perfect. You can't escape." As he spoke, his hands began restlessly exploring my waist. Startled, I blurted out, "I haven't taken my medicine." Medicine. Awkwardness hung heavy in the air. After a long silence, Yueling said, "So that's why you go wild every time. You're just playing hard to get with me." He teased me. "Putting on such a show. Could it be you're afraid of embarrassing yourself in front of me?" Only then did I realize, it's not just men who hate being called inadequate. I hate it too. I stubbornly retorted, "Well, you're wrong. It wasn't to make me look good. It was to make you look good. You beast." Before I could finish, he grumbled and flipped over to pounce on me. "Yueling," I cried, "I'm sorry. Grandpa, spare me." He paid no heed, covering my mouth as he growled, "Who's Yueling? Princess. You've got the wrong guy. I'm a beast now. Don't expect any grandpa or grandma nonsense." Yueling and I were playfully wrestling when Ying suddenly called out, "General." Then, my door was kicked open. I flung aside the quilt, pulled on a robe, and ordered Yueling to stay put. Stepping around the screen, I saw Zhuang Qiong standing outside the door, sword in hand, eyes blazing with fury. "Who's inside?" His eyes burned crimson, as if they might bleed. I laughed. "Is that any of your concern? Wielding swords before this palace. Does the general still know the difference between sovereign and subject? Between honor and shame?" He retorted. "I know the distinction between sovereign and subject. Between honor and shame. But does the princess know the difference between a woman's duty and decency?" Zhuang Qiong was indirectly calling me shameless. I flung a small clay bottle at him. He didn't even flinch. and it smashed into his temple, leaving a bloody gash. In the past, even a minor cut on his finger would make me cry like a fool, but now, as blood trickled down his brow, I felt nothing but satisfaction. Thinking to myself, serves him right. I stepped beside Zhuang Qiong, pressing my index finger firmly against the blade, forcing it down. If the general values decorum, I said, then let me tell you, the dignity of the imperial family is the dignity of the realm. My dignity is your dignity. The fire in his eyes flickered and dimmed. I was momentarily dazed. To an uninformed observer, his expression might have suggested he was deeply in love with me. Is this your revenge, princess? Because I brought Yin Yao back to the mansion. I found it laughable. Even without Yin Yao, there would be Feng Yao, Yu Yao, Shui Yao. Zhuang Qiong gritted his teeth. I know no Feng Yao or Yu Yao. Of course he wouldn't know them in this lifetime, but I remembered them clearly. I curved my lips and waved my hand. It doesn't matter. I don't care. Zhuang Qiong suddenly gave a cold laugh and countered. You don't care. His gaze swept toward the inner chambers, then fixed on my thin robe. His expression shifted several times before he ceased his questioning. Grabbing his long sword, he turned and left. Only then did I notice Lady Zhu had followed. Once Zhuang Qiong was out of earshot, she beamed. A joyous announcement for the princess. Lady Yin Yao has borne the general a son. This old servant thanks your highness for your audacity. It saved my foolish Qiong from losing his mind. Her face radiated the satisfaction of having survived a crisis. She lifted her chin and hurried after Zhuang Qiong. 3 days later, the emperor personally granted Yin Yao the title of consort, the equal wife of the prince consort. Rumor had it Zhuang Qiong had specifically petitioned for this honor for her. Equal wife. He intended to crush me completely underfoot. I had sent a letter to the palace, pleading with my mother to intervene. The plan to spare the child while taking the mother was one ID long considered. Expelling Yin Yao from the capital would preserve my dignity without harming the innocent. But that letter vanished without a trace. I knew I had become a sacrificial pawn in the imp Real family's quest to curry favor with Zhuang Qiong. Once the imperial decree was issued, my noble status vanished. A princess, once held in high esteem, now reduced to sharing a husband with others, I was worse than worthless mud. The princess mansion truly became the general's mansion. The so-called princess was nothing but a figurehead. By July, the heat was scorching. Clad in sheer gauze, I lay beneath the south window, listlessly tugging at my collar and fanning myself with a round fan to draw cool air beneath my garments. The candied fruits on the table had melted into a pool of lukewarm liquid. After 2 spoonfuls, I set the spoon aside. Lifting my gaze, I saw Zhuang Qiong standing in the doorway, his eyes fixed squarely on my pale, exposed chest. I pulled my waist-length skirt up, shifting his gaze as I sat upright. Whether it was my imagination or not, Zhuang Qiong's eyes lately held a raw, unmasked desire whenever he looked at me. How can you be so hot? He asked, showing rare concern. Ying impatiently complained. You should ask Lady Yin Yao about that. She controls all the supplies in the mansion now. All the finest goods flow straight into her courtyard. How dare she skimp on the prince's provisions? Ying. The general has welcomed a precious son. Naturally, the household's resources must prioritize the young master first. Keep your mouth shut. Go fetch some ice to prevent the general from overheating. Fearing Zhuang Qiong would punish Ying, I had to interrupt her. Little did I know the girl wouldn't appreciate it. She flung her hands and stormed off, fuming. Didn't she realize that even her mistress, me, was like a clay Buddha crossing the river? How could I possibly protect her? She was so reckless, charging straight into trouble. Ying speaks her mind, but she's also voicing the prince's grievances. If his highness feels wronged, why hasn't he uttered a word to me? Now Zhuang Qiong was remarkably patient, showing extra tolerance toward those around me. It was like slapping me twice only to rub my cheeks 3 times afterward. Seeing my silence, He lowered his eyes and smiled softly before adding, "This triumphant return to court has unfolded exactly as I anticipated, every person and every matter. Yet you alone grow increasingly baffling to me. When did you become so adept at bending and stretching?" Adaptable. Zhuang Qiong amused me. In my endless cycle of lives, my dignity and sincerity have been trampled underfoot by him countless times. The current situation is hardly the worst. What does adaptable mean? I merely go with the flow, acting freely when in power, retracting my sharp edges when out of favor. To put it plainly, I'm just a coward afraid of death. Yet even a spineless princess like me still has someone willing to obey my every command. That fool yelling at my slightest word. Head scale walls and tread tiles day after day just to see me. As if he weren't afraid of killing himself. My laughter grew wild and reckless. Zhuang Qiong watched it all, unable to feign kindness any longer. Suddenly, his words struck me like a bolt from the blue. "Kill him." He meant Yu Lang. "I'll send Yun Yao away. The princess mansion will remain yours. And I'll still be your consort. Everything that happened before, let's pretend it never did." I couldn't fathom how he could utter such heartless, shameless words. I glared at him, biting my lower lip until I finally snapped. "If you dare lay a finger on him, I'll drag you down with me to the grave. Even if it costs me my life." Though my position had weakened, I still had my doting grandfather, the Marquis of Anping, who held equal sway with Zhuang Qiong for now. He may not meddle in the affairs of the inner quarters, but if harm came to me, he would never stand idly by. Zhuang Qiong seemed unprepared for my immediate defiance. After a long, tense stare, he sneered, "You slimy little thing, don't you find it disgusting to lie in his arms?" He rarely lost his composure to curse, yet he swiftly regained his poise, reverting to that haughty, cold demeanor. "In a few days, the estate will welcome distinguished guests. These guests favor roses, and your Highness Rose Garden is the most fitting place to receive them. On that day, Yun Yao will accompany me. Your Highness should leave the estate and avoid being seen. It would be difficult for me to explain if others were to spot you. Step aside." He was telling me that in this world, my dignity depended entirely on him. I had to admit, when it came to suppressing me, Zhuang Qiong always had a knack for it. The day before the banquet, Yuelang suddenly asked me, "Tomorrow is the Festival of Coolness. Is your Highness free? I hear the city's music troupe is holding a boat dance competition. If you're interested, perhaps you could accompany me to watch." I'd been fretting over where to hide tomorrow when Yuelang came to my rescue. He surely knew how difficult my days in the mansion had become. Yet he never treated me with disdain despite my fallen status. Instead, he tenderly protected what remained of my shattered self-respect. I dared not let my heart stir for him. Yet how could I not? I turned away, feigning laziness. "This princess isn't going anywhere. In this sweltering heat, you want to exhaust me to death." He hooked my little finger with a mischievous smile, pleading, "Please, princess, be kind to Yuelang. Come join the fun with me." His cool touch against my sticky skin made my face flush. I pushed him away, feigning exasperation. "Fine, I'll go. But in this heat." "Stop pestering me." The next morning before leaving, Zhuang Qiong sought me out again. Seeing my plain attire and readiness to depart, his face darkened instantly. "All those sweet words you used to coax me, not a single one now." He wanted me to yield to him. Yet I couldn't fathom his true intentions. Seeing that the hour Yuelang and I had agreed upon was approaching, I had no time to deal with Zhuang Qiong. I pulled my veil over my face and was about to leave, but he grabbed me by the arm and said again, "If you just beg me, you can stay in the mansion and accompany me to the night banquet." His grip was so tight it hurt. "Zhuang Qiong," I asked, "do you wish you could kill me right now?" I don't mean that," he stammered, a rare stutter. I wanted to ask him, "Then why does every word you speak make me wish I were dead?" The cooling festival comes every year, but boat dance competitions are rare. After sunset, Rows of glass lanterns hung from the riverside stone railings. Several painted boats drifted on the water. Their dancers, beautiful women with willow-like waists swaying like reeds. It was truly a sight to behold. But I turned and pushed my way out of the crowd. Moon Hand swiftly followed, wrapping his arms around me protectively. Why stop watching? Not pretty enough. His voice brushed my ear as I puffed out my cheeks and turned away. Not pretty enough. Not as pretty as me. I wasn't joking. Yet he chuckled endlessly. His laughter soothed me. I wiped the cold sweat from my forehead, afraid he'd see my panic. Earlier, I thought I spotted Zhuang Qiong in the crowd. He stared at me with icy eyes, or perhaps at Yulangi's body radiating murderous intent, as if he wanted to eliminate us both. But right now, he should be entertaining important guests at the mansion. How could he possibly be here? Probably just my eyes playing tricks on me. Escaping the crowd, I jabbed my elbow into Yulang's stomach and said with a sly, sarcastic tone, "What? Do you think this palace isn't as good as them? No wonder you couldn't take your eyes off them earlier. You were really focused, weren't you?" I pouted, expecting Yulang to tease me with his usual smooth talk. Instead, he broke character. Smiling silently, he led me to the riverbank's edge, where we sat side by side on 2 stone benches. The evening breeze carried a chill, making me sneeze several times. Yulang pulled me into his embrace. In that moment, we looked like any ordinary couple. I wrapped my arms tightly around his waist, afraid this fleeting happiness might slip away. Yulang, please don't come to the princess residence anymore. I'll visit you once a month instead. Is that all right? He shook his head, stubbornly refusing. No, once a month isn't enough. What's wrong? Have you grown tired of me, princess? Of course not. I protested urgently, gathering my courage to speak frankly. Yulang, you're so intelligent, you must know my life hangs by a thread now. Entangling yourself with me won't end well for you. Truthfully, I'm not afraid of death, but I dread dragging you down with me. If that madman Zhuang Qiong ever draws a blade against you, what good would it do if I fought him to the death? If you're gone, what if I never meet you again in the next life? Yulang, who never spoke of his own affairs, suddenly said after hearing my disheartened words. My birth mother was a dancer. She gave birth to me and was thrown into a well and drowned immediately afterward. I fell silent as he continued. Right after I was born, they sent me to the first lattice quarters. She named me Guer, chained me to a shack, and made me perform monkey tricks for her own son. One day, he tore a huge hole in the roof of my shack. A few nights later, a downpour soaked me like a drowned rat. The next day, I was feverish and couldn't crawl, and he beat me for it. That day, I was cold and in agony, vomiting blood twice. Before passing out, I thought dying like this wouldn't be so bad. Life was nothing but suffering anyway. But then I thought, if I could survive this, I would transform myself completely. Yulang pulled back his own scars, using his bloody past to comfort me. His face showed no emotional love, hate, sorrow, or joy. Yet the calmer he seemed, the more my heart twisted in agony. I covered his mouth with my hand, silencing him. Yulang, I understand what you mean. I wouldn't be so foolish as to take my own life. They'll find a way to deal with Zhuang Qiong too, though my death was predestined. My desperate struggle against fate was nothing more than a grasshopper trying to stop a cart. Yulang clasped my hand in his own. The thick calluses on his palm rubbed against mine, a sensation both painful and tingling. He continued, Your Highness, do you know how I finally escaped my cage? I shook my head. He looked straight at me, his cold eyes holding a tenderness only I could understand. My escape had little to do with my own strength. Back then, I was too weak. Even struggling only earned me another beating. My survival depended entirely on the infighting within my father's household. Another shrewd lady outmaneuvered the chief consort, granting me a reprieve. She was my benefactor. Without her, no matter how brilliant I might be. How could I have scaled those towering walls? Some things are simply beyond the power of one person to change. For a moment, I was dazed. I had thought Yuelang was encouraging me to strive for hope, to fight against heaven and against men. But instead, he told me that some things, some people, are simply beyond our power to overcome. Then who should I turn to? What princess? Now I'm nothing but a beggar with no place to call home. Who could I possibly rely on? I murmured to myself, unaware when my tears had begun to fall. Yuelang cupped my face, wiping away my tears. Suddenly, he smiled a smile so radiant it truly made the moon in the sky pale in comparison. Shall I be your princess benefactor? Yuelang will slay the prince consort for your highness. I threw myself into his arms, burying my face against his chest and shaking like a rattle. His voice grew noticeably colder as he asked, "Does the princess regret his death?" Startled, I shook my head and laughed, scolding him playfully. Silly Yuelang. Meeting you in this lifetime is truly the greatest blessing. I knew his martial arts were formidable, but how could I bear him risking his life for me? Zhuangqiong was the destined protagonist if heaven did not decree his death. He would not die. Yuelang. I choked out his name, tears welling in my throat. Let's elope. Okay. Ying and I met under the willow tree 3 streets ahead of the princess mansion. After walking a few steps, she asked, "What happened? Why does your highness look so gloomy?" I gave a bitter smile, unsure how to answer, when I wept like a rain-soaked pear blossom, begging Yuelang to elope with me. He merely stroked my head with his usual calm and said, think about it." Heaven only knows how my burning heart cooled by half in that moment. I was foolish enough to believe his promise to kill Zhuangqiong for me was genuine. So I blurted out a challenge without thinking, eloping with a disgraced princess, declaring war on a general whose power was as vast as the sea. Yuelang was just an ordinary man, had only said those sweet words to placate me. How could I have taken them seriously? Of course he'd refuse me gently. Has the banquet at the mansion concluded? I rubbed my dry eyes, changing the subject. I hear the honored guest failed to show today. His Royal Highness waited for hours and is nearly beside himself with rage. My feet faltered, cold sweat breaking out instantly. Had I not been seeing things? Had Zhuangqiong truly appeared by the Saiwa River? Yuelang. Could he be in danger? No. I reassured myself. If Ying was right, Zhuangqiong was too busy fuming to even think of leaving the palace. Clinging to this sliver of hope, I walked back to my courtyard in silence, lost in my thoughts. I didn't notice that Fengqi pavilion, usually ablaze with light, was completely dark tonight, like a soulless shell. I stumbled into the room, oblivious to the figure seated on the chair. "Did your highness enjoy the entertainment?" Zhuangqiong's single sentence nearly shattered my courage. Seeing my twisted ankle, he chuckled. "Why so frightened, princess? Could it be you've done something to make your conscience ache?" His face remained hidden in the darkness. I couldn't see his expression, only hearing his laughter cold and hard. Zhuangqiong was a master of disguise. He despised me, yet never let me glimpse his true feelings until my deathbed. When he'd bare his fangs, grinding his teeth as if he wanted to tear me apart and boil me into porridge, a chill gripped me instantly, my tongue trembling so violently I couldn't utter a word for a long while. Zhuangqiong rose and approached me. I wanted to flee, but my feet felt nailed to the floor. His index finger traced my brow, my eyes, my lips, then lifted my chin, forcing me to meet his gaze. "Has the princess heard of Zhou Yuanxue?" I swallowed hard and answered with all my resolve. "That madman. Who hasn't heard of him? Murdering his mother, slaying his father, slaughtering his brothers. Half the palace fell victim to Zhou Yuanxue's blade. He was an emotionless devil, striking terror into all who heard his name. Madman." Zhuangqiong scoffed. "If he's mad, then the prince entangled with him must be a fool. No. The princess is clever. I am the fool she plays with like a puppet." He shoved me hard onto the bed, his grip nearly crushing my jaw. Pain made tears spill from my eyes. My mouth clamped shut, I couldn't even protest. I've always found it odd. He continued. That filthy male prostitute was beaten to death long ago. Yet your loyal servant never sought you a new lover. So who's this lowly creature who's crawled onto the prince's bed? Zhou Yuan Shuo. Ha. He repeatedly breaks his appointments with me, yet conveniently finds time to visit your chambers. He released his grip, staring at me blankly for a moment before continuing. Why, princess, would you throw yourself at the prince of an enemy nation? This servant cannot fathom it. I implore you to enlighten me. Stars danced before my eyes. My ears buzzed, I couldn't make heads or tails of what Zhuang Qiong was babbling about. My mind was a muddle, and my temper flared. I snapped. Zhuang Qiong, who I throw myself at is none of your business. You're allowed to have women on both arms, but I can't have someone who understands me. What about Zhou Yuan Shuo? What does my moon-like lover have to do with that madman Zhou Yuan Shuo? Today I hosted this grand banquet. Who did I invite as my guest? That so-called distinguished guest was none other than that madman. Yet he betrayed me once more, not even showing his face. I had long suspected this honored guest was none other than Zhou Yuan Shuo. According to the novel's plot, after the command of the Imperial Guards fell into the hands of Zhou Yuan Shuo's confidant, Zhuang Qiong finally realized this man was too formidable to handle alone. Thus, he offered 3 cities as leverage to lure Zhou Yuan Shuo into his faction, seeking his aid in plotting a grand rebellion. Tonight's banquet was specially arranged by Zhuang Qiong for Zhou Yuan Shuo. Yet he didn't show up. He turned down 3 cities and instead took his wife to enjoy the festival of cool breezes. I dispatched a squad to track Zhou Yuan Shuo's whereabouts. My Coats reported that my princess was watching dances by the riverbank and conversing under the moonlight with him. Your Highness, when you wept and begged him to take you far away, did you know how much it tore at my heart? I detest his uncompromising slander against Yuelang. And I detest even more his sudden transformation into a deeply affectionate persona. Zhuang Qiong, you ask what I want. I should be asking you what you want. You feign affection, yet deep down you likely wish to see me torn to pieces. Now that I'm crippled, if you want my life, just take it. Why bother spouting nonsense about Yuelang being Zhou Yuan Shuo? So, the princess was deceived by him too. Never mind. It's not important. Zhuang Qiong snorted with a mocking laugh, suddenly yanking me by the collar toward him. An excellent question. Your Highness, what does this servant desire? Even I am baffled. Since you are ever so clever, perhaps you could figure out what this servant truly wants. Staring into his vicious eyes, my head grew hot. I yanked out my golden hairpin and plunged it into his chest. I don't care what you want. Stop acting like a madman in front of me. Get out of my room. No sooner had the words left my mouth than I heard someone crash heavily to the floor. Peering over, I saw Ying pinned down, her shoulders held fast while her hands were pressed against the ground. A guard held a short blade. As I screamed no, in that instant, his hand swung, and with a swift chop, he severed one of Ying's fingers. Zhuang Qiong looked at the golden hairpin in his chest, then at me. His gaze seemed to scold me. Is this all you've got? He pulled out the hairpin and tossed it aside. Barely a drop of blood stained his chest. From this moment on, until the princess helps me find what I truly desire, Ying will lose a finger every cup of tea's time. Princess, you'd better hurry. Ying's wails tore at my heart. I cried with her, my eyes burning so fiercely I thought I'd weep every tear I possessed today. I tugged at General Zhuang Qiong's sleeve, pleading, what exactly do you want? What are you trying to do? Please don't hurt Ying. General, I beg you. He looked down at me with a smile. When the princess is like this with her heart and eyes filled only with Mimi, heart feels utterly satisfied. I knew what he wanted. He craved this body I once desperately tried to offer him, the one that left him utterly unmoved. Along with the heart beneath it, a heart long since numb. But now, I no longer wished to give him this body or this heart. For within this heart, another had taken root. I once believed I'd stop at nothing to survive. But now I see I died 7 lifetimes in vain without learning a single lesson. Once I thought all I craved was to survive. Now I know this wretched life, reborn time and time again, is merely a plea for someone to bestow a shred of affection. Given my current situation, submitting to Zhuangqiong would be worse than death. Opening my eyes would surely mean another cycle of rebirth. But there's Ying me foolish Ying. Through dozens of lifetimes of endless cycles, only Ying has ever loved me with true devotion. Each time death approached, I was covered in wounds, and each time she clung to me desperately, begging me not to leave her alone. Knowing it was futile, she still lunged madly at Zhuangqiong, seeking vengeance for me, until my eyes closed in helplessness. She always fought for me with every ounce of strength, weeping until her tears ran dry. I couldn't bear to let her suffer with me time and again. I must live. I have to survive. Kneeling at Zhuangqiong's feet, I reached to loosen his belt. When I spoke again, my voice trembled. Its tone altered. Please treat me gently, General. He didn't seem to mind my tear-streaked, disheveled appearance. Pinching my cheek, he asked, "The princess will forget Zhou Yu and Zhuo, won't she?" I blinked obediently, tears dripping onto Zhuangqiong's hand. He broke the prince's heart. "This servant will seek justice for you." He smiled with satisfaction, then leaned in to press himself against me. After that day, I became nothing more than a puppet in Zhuangqiong's palm. Nightmares haunted me daily, and my body grew weaker by the day. Ying brought me a bowl of medicinal soup. Seeing my cold sweat, she urged, "Princess, now that the prince consort stays by your side daily, it shows he's truly repented. Give him another chance. Let bygones be bygones." The bygones Ying referred to were Yuelang. Since that day, he had never come looking for me again. Perhaps Zhuangqiong was right. Yuelang is Zhou Yu and Zhuo. His closeness to me was merely a ploy to extract information about my maternal grandfather. The Marquis of Anping's preferences and vulnerability to bolster his bid for command of the Imperial Guard. Once his goal was achieved, I'd become a disposable pawn. To think I ever dreamed of running away with him. Ha! How utterly foolish. I took the medicine bowl from Ying's hands, then gently grasped hers, tracing the stump of her severed finger. With a faint smile, I asked, "The prince consort severed your finger. Do you not hate him?" Her eyes reddened, and she bit her lip, shaking her head. "I don't hate him," she said, "as long as the princess and the prince consort are well." As long as the princess is well, this servant has only suffered a little injury. What is there to fear? But it was far from a mere scratch. A young woman with a disability, what family would ever take her? She sacrificed a perfect match for me. Yet she spoke of it as lightly as losing a sesame seed. I held her hand and admonished her and myself, "Fool, never trust love too easily. Love is the most unreliable thing of all. In this world, the only one you can truly rely on is yourself." After lunch, I chose a peach-colored gauze robe. Wearing it, I resembled a sickly beauty. This was the time set aside for Zhuangqiong and Yunya to bond as mother and son. I was ready and waiting, eager to stir up trouble. Both men startled at my arrival. Zhuangqiong left Yunyao and her son to approach me, scrutinizing me from head to toe. His gaze lingered on my slightly exposed shoulder as he coldly demanded, "Dressed so provocatively for whom?" I silently cursed him a hypocrite. His eyes were practically glued to me. Yet he had the nerve to ask who I was trying to impress. Keeping my thoughts to myself, I maintained a surface-level composure and replied evasively, "My timing is poor. Please continue your important matters. General and Madam, I'll return later to see the child." As I turned to leave, Zhuangqiong grabbed my arm. "You are his mother," he said. "What timing is there to consider when visiting him?" Running his fingers over my cool fingertips, he added sternly, "You've been unwell lately. Take better care of yourself. If you wear yourself out, no one will grieve for you. Yeonyo's face was grim. After carrying the child for 10 months and nearly dying in childbirth, to have her own son call another woman mother, how heartbreaking that must be. She surely understood that although Zhuang Qiong had kept her in the mansion, he still harbored prejudice against her lowly origins. What good was being a cowwife without the support of her maternal clan or the affection of her husband? She was still nothing but a pile of mud. I gave her a smile, and she gritted her teeth at me, ignoring her provocation. I turned to Zhuang Qiong and said, "Speaking of which, I have a matter of importance to discuss with the general. Since we meet by chance, may I ask, would it be acceptable for me to select a date to visit the palace?" His expression darkened instantly. "Princess, have I not told you that in the future you may rely only upon me? Why do you still refuse to sever ties with others?" Ever since the Festival of Coolness, Zhuang Qiong had developed an extreme desire to control me. I smiled at him and replied, unable to break ties. "General, you truly misunderstand me. What ties could I possibly have with parents who sold their daughter for glory? Since you plan to rebel, I'll ask mother to replace the Imperial Guard commander with your man. That way, Zhou Yuanshua won't get in the way." Zhuang Qiong hadn't expected such bluntness. In an instant, he concealed his murderous intent and asked, "What nonsense are you spouting, princess? I don't understand." "General, there's no need to feign ignorance. There are no outsiders here." As I spoke, my gaze swept toward Yunyao. Catching my look, he turned and instructed her, "Return to your quarters first. The princess and I will check on the child. You may come back later." Yeonyo's eyes instantly welled with tears. She withdrew obediently. Yet I knew all too well how deeply hurt and humiliated she felt in that moment. "How cruel your heart is, General. Driving her away like this must break her. A woman's hatred, you know, can breed betrayal." Zhuang Qiong's hand instinctively brushed against my neck. His gaze drifted as he murmured, "As long as you stay obedient, I can't control the others." "Well then," he tightened his grip slightly and asked, "The princess wouldn't betray her subject, would she?" Suffocation closed in. I smiled and patted his hand gently, reminding him, "You're hurting me. Because of me." Zhuang Qiong and Zhou Yuanshua became sworn enemies, unable to secure the Imperial Guard. His rebellion stalled. I volunteered to help Zhuang Qiong claim the position of Imperial Guard commander. He couldn't fathom why I'd side with him after all. My parents sat upon the dragon throne. He refused to believe I could be so ruthless, heartless. It was they who cast me aside first. "General, you'll kill me eventually." The script was said he would die by Zhuang Qiong's hand sooner or later. I often sensed his conflicting emotions toward me. A desire to kill me, yet an unwillingness to do so. I had no choice but to gamble. "Today I aid you, General. When my cause succeeds, I ask only that you spare my life." In the end, Zhuang Qiong agreed to my request. He must have been at his wit's end, utterly helpless against Zhou Yuanshua. So he let me try this desperate measure. On the day I entered the palace, he ordered Ying to stay behind in the mansion and assigned 2 female officials to accompany me. They claimed it was for my care, but in truth, they were there to monitor my every move. Come to think of it, the last time I saw the Empress was, well, the last time, well, truth be told, our encounters had been few and far between. Relying on emotional appeal was hardly a viable strategy. Fortunately, through my cycles of reincarnation, I'd pieced together enough fragmented yet distinct glimpses to grasp her nature. Not foolish, fiercely self-preserving, and deeply indulgent. She was the sort who responded to force, not to soft words. Incense burned within the opulent palace, the air thick with decadent indulgence, showing no sign of the dynasty's impending collapse. The Empress sipped her tea leisurely, lavishing praise upon me. "I hear you've been getting along quite well with the general lately." "That's more like it. A woman who can't keep a man by her side is utterly useless. Women within the palace walls, no matter how exalted their status, ultimately revolve around the pursuit of favor. Yet I did not look down on them. I envied them, at least their struggles were for a better life, while mine was merely for survival, with an uncertain future. If your majesty wishes to win General Zhuang's allegiance, hand the command of the Imperial Guard to Li Kuo. I cut straight to the point. Li Kuo was Zhuang Qiong's confidant. Before my departure, he had repeatedly urged me that Li Kuo alone was fit for the role. The emperor was now old, little more than a ceremonial figure in the palace. The real decisions of state were made by the empress. Her hand paused, her eyebrows twitching imperceptibly as she laughed it off. What nonsense are you spouting, silly girl? The current commander was handpicked by your grandfather. Could there be any reason to distrust the general? Zhuang Qiong's achievements overshadowed the sovereign, and his intentions were far from pure. The Imperial Guard, as the final line of defense safeguarding the imperial family, could never be entrusted to him lightly. Does mother know that the commander freely roaming the palace is a lackey of Zhou Yuanshuo, the third prince of the enemy nation? At these words, the empress' expression abruptly changed. How could that be? He was handpicked by your maternal grandfather. Utter nonsense. I curved my lips, signaling the lady-in-waiting behind me to present a thick stack of envelopes. The Marquis of Anping is old after all. Miscalculations are inevitable. Mother, do not fret. Look at this first. The general went to great lengths to find Zhou Yuanshuo's weak points. How dare you? The empress snatched the envelopes and flung them to the ground, pointing an accusing finger at me. Marquis of Anping. Marquis of Anping. You're implying your own grandfather is senile. Who gave you the audacity? Mother trusts my maternal grandfather, and I understand that. Yet you treat me, your own flesh and blood, with such suspicion. It truly breaks my heart. I stuffed a jujube cake into my mouth, muffling my words as I pierced the unspoken tension in the room. Still, I understand. Everyone says the general will rebel sooner or later. It's only natural you fear him. The room fell into an eerie silence. I waited patiently until the Empress Dowager's face darkened. Your Highness speaks without restraint. This time, I shall spare you. But if it happens again, do not blame me for disregarding our mother-daughter bond. She waved me out. Her eyes narrowed in a gloomy glare, as if even one more glance at me annoyed her. I touched my belly and whispered, "Mother, I am carrying the general's child." She remained motionless, waiting for me to continue. The general is a man of deep loyalty and honor. Mother, you should know this better than anyone. Were it not for the 2 lives we owe his parents, his unwavering loyalty would never have led him to seek to overthrow you. I glanced at the 2 ladies-in-waiting behind me, their faces frozen in shock. Before continuing, rebellion was inevitable for the general, but I bear his child said that if father is willing to name the child in my womb as crown prince, he will spare the bloodshed and grant you both a peaceful death in your high positions. The empress' expression remained composed, yet sparks danced in her eyes. I stepped before her and continued my web of lies. Your humble son believes this is a fair bargain. It avoids conflict and turmoil. Yet imperial power remains secure. After all, the blood flowing through my child's veins is royal blood too. Mother, what say you? The empress finally erupted from her silence. She picked up a tea bowl and hurled it at me, her voice cracking with fury. You wretch! You accursed creature! Absurd! She nearly toppled from the imperial couch. I rushed to steady her, gripping her forearm tightly. Her hand instinctively found its way into my sleeve pocket. Are there not enough absurdities in this world? Does the prince consort of the princess mansion daring to take a secondary wife not count as absurd? A flicker of guilt crossed the empress' eyes. I spoke earnestly. Mother, if the general raises his army, who in the palace do you think could stand against him? The imperial guards were not entrusted to our own people but instead handed over to the prince of an enemy nation. Does that truly ease your mind? Truthfully, Wouldn't it be enough for you and father to live out your days in peace? Why concern ourselves so much with the affairs of future generations? You must think this through carefully. If you decide to proceed, then hand over the command of the Imperial Guard to Li Kwa. Let the general see our sincerity. As soon as I stepped out of the Empress chambers, 2 ladies-in-waiting hurried to support me. One of them asked, "Princess, are you with child? Such momentous news, why haven't we heard a word?" I waved her away. "Pregnant. Impossible." That was merely a pretext I'd devised on the spot to persuade the Empress. Gazing at the fading glow on the horizon, the earlier excitement waned, leaving only a sense of exhilaration. "Since I'm home for a rare visit, my ladies, you've worked hard. Accompany me for a stroll." We strolled back to Linglong Hall, my former residence, now uninhabited. It felt eerily quiet, like a haunted house. Along the way, I encountered many palace servants who swiftly spread the news of my wandering through the palace. I casually grabbed a young maid, ordered her to bring a pot of floral tea, and sat in the courtyard sipping it for half an hour. Only when the lady-in-waiting behind me reminded me did I stir. "Princess, if you don't return soon, the general will worry." "Ah, I truly don't want to leave." Those words came straight from my heart. In a life already engulfed in turmoil, finding even a moment of peace felt like a rare gift. Reluctantly, I rose to leave, but the moment I stepped through the palace gates, my path was blocked. A man stood there, asking, "Princess, why did you not keep your appointment on the 19th day of the 7th month?" The 19th day of the 7th month, the 3rd day after the festival of cool breezes. My mind was filled with question marks. The lady-in-waiting behind me whispered in my ear, "This is the current commander of the Imperial Guard." Oh, so he's one of Zhou Yuanshuo's men. I didn't want to engage with him. With a dark expression, I tried to leave, but he drew his sword and blocked my path. The cold gleam of the blade was like the sharp eyes of the moon god. "My lord requests an answer." "Princess, why did you not keep your appointment on the 19th day of the 7th month?" The lord he referred to must be Zhou Yuanshuo. I didn't know Zhou Yuanshuo, I only knew Yuelang. But now I realized, Yuelang was actually Zhou Yuanshuo. I gave a cold laugh. What 19th of July? What meeting? When did your lord ever make an appointment with me? It was utterly baffling. After returning to the mansion, the 2 ladies-in-waiting parted ways with me and hurried off to the study, likely to report today's events to Zhuang Qiong. While I was having dinner, Zhuang Qiong rushed in and asked me the moment we met, "Your Highness, are you with child?" My hand trembled, and the black beans I was holding with my chopsticks tumbled off the table. Seeing him panting slightly, I burst out laughing and countered, "Would the general prefer this palace?" to nod or shake her head. It was strange. He knew it was false news. Yet why was he so flustered? After all those years, had coaxed me to drink bowl after bowl of contraceptive concoctions, calling them tonics. Did he not know whether I could conceive? Zhuang Qiong opened his mouth but made no sound. He sat down beside me, his expression calm. If I could have a child with the princess, I would naturally be overjoyed. Overjoyed. I couldn't care less. As his mother, I can't even protect myself. How could I let him suffer with me? Those words were just lies to deceive my mother. He must have thought I was feeling despondent, for he patted the back of my head and coaxed me in a deep voice, like a child. "Your Highness speaks nonsense again. As long as you remain loyal to me, how could I ever bring myself to harm you? Take care of your health, and one day we shall have our own child." I gave no clear answer, only reminded him, I have no desire for children. But if Li Kwa truly takes the post of Imperial Guard commander, I shall be the foremost contributor to his success. When that time comes, I hope the general will remember me favorably. Days later, news reached the court. The newly appointed commander hadn't even warmed his seat before being replaced by Li Kwa. The prince's residence bustled with unprecedented activity. Daily visitors were opportunists scrambling to curry favor with Zhuang Qiang. After all, the winds of change might blow, and the wise sought to hedge their bets. Joyful events lift the spirit, and Zhuang Qiang was no exception. His smile had grown more frequent lately, and he treated me with greater tenderness than before. One day, on a sudden whim, he insisted on taking me to see the base where he was recruiting soldiers and gathering supplies. Speechless with surprise, I watched as he explained. "Didn't your highness say she wanted me to remember her kindness?" "I remember." Suddenly, he gently pulled me into his embrace and whispered in my ear, "Your highness, let's live well together from now on. As long as you're here with me, your heart is with me. I will treat you well." I breathed in the familiar yet unfamiliar scent on his body, a complex mix of emotions flooding me, leaving me at a loss for words. I remained silent, and Zhuang Qiang showed no impatience. He simply held me, his embrace tightening as if determined to coax words from me. I sighed. "General, do you know how long I've waited to hear these words? If only you'd said them sooner." He brushed his cheek against mine. I know it all. I was wrong before. I neglected you. It won't happen again." I laughed. What the hell did he know? How long had I waited for him? How many times had I died for him? The pain I endured, could it truly be summed up with just the word neglect? News of Yueling reached me again before autumn began. I was still lazing in bed when Yunyao burst in and laid all her cards on the table. "My lord will come to rescue you, but only if you reveal the secret location where Zhuang Qiang hides his troops." I wasn't surprised. After all, I hadn't lived several lifetimes for nothing. When I saw the wing tattoo on her forearm earlier, I knew she was Zhou Yuanchuo's spy planted in the princess residence. "I'm quite comfortable here. Why would I need your master to save me?" Yun Yao retorted. "You truly intend to aid Zhuang Qiang in rebellion? Being a fallen princess isn't so easy." I propped myself up, yawned, and chuckled. The general values loyalty and righteousness. I've aided him greatly. He's already promised to raise Xian'er under my care. When he ascends the throne, I shall be empress, the mother of his eldest son. Xian'er was Yun Yao's son. A few days prior, Zhuang Qiang had ordered him brought to my chambers for upbringing. Since then, Yun Yao's eyes had grown dull and lifeless. Hearing me bring it up again, her eyes flashed with malice. After a moment of forced restraint, she said, "Princess, all his sweet talk is only because you can support him. Once your kingdom falls and your home is destroyed, will he still treat you as he does now? Don't forget how he treated me when I first entered the palace. And how he treated you. How can you trust the honeyed words of someone without a sincere heart?" I scoffed coldly in return. "Zhuang Qiang is unreliable, but Zhou Yuanchua is trustworthy. He disguised himself as a male companion to please Mei He knows exactly why. If Zhuang Qiang lacks sincerity, does that mean he possesses it? Once he disposes of Zhuang Qiang, won't his next blade fall upon the imperial family of our dynasty?" "You're mistaken. I don't know how Zhuang Qiang deceived you, but consider this. In the months our lord has spent with you, has he ever shown the slightest hint of exploitation? Your Chu kingdom is vast. Our Zhou dynasty never sought to conquer it by force, yet constant strife between our nations persisted. Our lord's original plan was to support Zhuang Qiang as the new emperor and sign a peace treaty. But who could have known? He fell in love with you. If not for you, would he have driven Zhuang Qiang to such a bitter, life-or-death conflict? Can you still not see his true heart?" Yun Yao wiped her tears as she spoke of Yueling. Her voice nearly choked with emotion. She glared at me, her eyes filled with bitter resentment. I watched her in silence. She was right about one thing. During the time Yueling spent by my side, he never asked me unnecessary questions beyond sharing laughter and playful banter. But I refused to dwell on those memories. Just thinking of him made me feel so wronged. I burst into tears. I always got stuck in my own stubborn ways, never daring to believe that a heartless madman could truly love me with all his heart. Yun Yao and I stared at each other for a long time, both of us with reddened eyes. She asked me in a heavy voice. Princess, are you really going to choose Zhuangqiong? Have you fallen in love with him? I buried my face in the pillow. Images of Zhuangqiong and Yueling flashed through my mind. Whom should I trust? Whom should I not? I struggled through countless lifetimes, finally glimpsing hope for survival. Yet fate gave me a gentle push, sending me back to this crossroads. But was survival what I truly sought? No. What I pitifully, desperately pursued with every ounce of my being was love. I summoned Ying and had her fetch paper and ink. As she watched me write down the words betraying Zhuangqiong stroke by stroke, she shook her head tearfully, pleading, Princess, you've finally reconciled with the prince consort. Don't listen to the schemer's slander. Princess. I shoved the note into her hands and gritted my teeth, ordering her to deliver it to Yun Yao. Princess, you won't regret today's decision. Yun Yao received the note, her brows and eyes softening. She gave me a slight nod, made her promise, and then strode off. Ying threw herself onto my bedside, wailing like a ghost. Anyone unaware might have thought she was mourning my death. Why can't you just use your brain? I stroked her hair, sighing helplessly. Well, let her be my clumsy little burden, it wasn't so bad. I rose, washed, dressed, and timed my steps precisely as I hurried to the study. Zhuangqiong sat at his desk. I knelt before him with a thud. What does the princess mean by this? His voice sounded unchanged. I took a deep breath and said solemnly, General, I have something to tell you, but I fear you won't believe me. He stood up and helped me to my feet, smiling calmly. Go on. I'm listening. I told Zhuangqiong everything that had happened that morning. He remained silent for a long time. I bit my lip and asked him, General, do you not believe me? Is it because Yun Yao bore you a child that you think I'm framing her as Zhou Yuanshuo's spy? Your servant was merely astonished, momentarily unable to respond. He narrowed his eyes, fixing me with a gaze that seemed to probe my very soul before sighing. I am deeply grateful the princess came to warn me. But if you chose to stand with me, why reveal the hidden troop location to Yun Yao? I took his hand, my expression cold. I hate Zhou Yuanshuo. Therefore, General, deploy your forces to catch him like a fish in a barrel, so he cannot cause more trouble. Zhuangqiong's gaze flickered. Well then, he chuckled softly, gently rubbing my nose. Indeed. How could I have failed to consider turning the tables? Princess, your wisdom is truly remarkable. I must look at you with new eyes. After discussing with me, he decided to closely monitor Yun Yao's movements and wait for developments, lest we alert the snake by stirring the grass. Stepping out of the study, Ying exhaled deeply, her worried expression replaced by a chatterbox. Princess, you nearly scared the life out of me. I truly thought you were turning your back on us. I smiled faintly, composed myself, and patted her shoulder. Ying, in this life, the hardest and most dreaded thing is choosing the wrong side. As for where your loyalties lie, no one will ever care. She looked at me with a puzzled expression. So, Princess, are we on the right side or the wrong side now? I pinched her plump little cheek. The little minx always gave me such tricky questions. I didn't know what was right or wrong. I had simply done everything in my power. As for the outcome, I believed the moment of truth would come soon enough. After deciding to capture Zhou Yuanshuo alive, Zhuangqiong set a trap, waiting for him to walk into it. One evening before dinner, Zhuangqiong, who hadn't been seen in a while, made time to dine with me. Well, moved tonight, he suddenly told me. My hand paused mid-motion. I set down my chopsticks and bowl, smiling as I ladled soup into his bowl. It's cold tonight. Have some soup to warm yourself. You wouldn't want to catch a chill and return tomorrow feeling under the weather. Tomorrow, Princess. Would you be sad if the one returning tomorrow isn't me? I fully understood Zhuangqiong's apprehension toward Zhou Yuanshuo. After all, despite his pride, he had suffered repeated defeats at Zhou Yuanshuo's hands. Facing him again. The psychological pressure was inevitably heavy. I smiled reassuringly at him. I'll wait patiently for your return. On the day I entered the palace, I'd hidden a secret letter in my sleeve, pleading with my mother to ally with Zhou Yu and Shuo. The price was ceding 3 border cities to the Zhou kingdom. If she agreed, Li Kuo's promotion would serve as the signal, though Li Kuo served Zhuang Qiong. He had only recently taken command of the Imperial Guard. Naturally, he couldn't match the stature my maternal grandfather, the Marquis of Anping, held in their hearts. I surmised Li Kuo had likely been eliminated by the Marquis of Anping's men by now. Tonight, the Imperial Guard would assist Zhou Yu and Shuo in capturing the traitor Zhuang Qiong. Zhuang Qiong. He wouldn't be returning. 17. Dawn broke with a misty drizzle. Seated by the south window, I watched the world shrouded in haze. A figure approached through the fog, its outline gradually sharpening. A curved blade in his left hand, a rose in his right. He reached my window and hopped through, gripping the frame. It's so chilly out, why leave the window open? He sat on my daybed, bringing a chill that made me shiver. My eyes reddened as I teased him. If I didn't leave it open, how would you get in? You never walk properly. Yet you ask such a ridiculous question. Seeing my tears welling up, he chuckled softly, pinned the rose to my temple, and told me not to cry. Princess, this thing I plucked on a whim isn't worth much. But if you like it, just reward me with a smile that would make me happy. Blood smeared everywhere on his body. Wounds covering his chest and back. Last night had clearly been a fierce battle. I forced a faint smile, then hugged him tightly, gently stroking his neck as I whispered in his ear. You've worked hard. Sleep now. The pain will be gone when you wake. After sitting motionless all night, the heart that had been lodged in my throat finally settled back into my chest. The one who returned was Yuelang. He had won. I had won the bet. On the 3rd day of Yulang's unconsciousness, the imperial physician sighed as he informed me that he had been poisoned with an unusual toxin, one beyond the capabilities of the entire Imperial Medical Bureau. To counter the poison, one must consult the poisoner. I instructed Ying to bring Xianer and accompany me to the dungeons. In the deepest dungeon, where the worst criminals were held, Zhuang Qiong knelt on the floor, his hands chained to 2 separate posts. His head hung low, his body filthy. The once mighty general now looked like a rag doll. Xianer wailed loudly in his swaddling clothes. The sound made Zhuang Qiong's body tremble. He lifted his eyes to see me. His vacant gaze suddenly sharpened. He tugged at the iron chains, straining to lunge forward. Why? Why? He roared, as if he could devour me alive. Once he calmed slightly, I asked directly, where is the antidote? Zhuang Qiong paused, raising a disdainful eyebrow. Ha! I thought you came just to see me. Turns out it was for him. What? Really fallen for him? He spat on the ground, chuckling hollowly. Gone was his former composure, his voice thick with menace. If I die, he won't live either. You are going to die. Seeing my coldness, Zhuang Qiong's expression faltered, tinged with sorrow. But for the sake of our past as husband and wife, I'll make a deal with you. Hand over the antidote, and I guarantee your child will grow up safely. Ying cradled Xianer as she approached. The boy blinked his large eyes at Zhuang Qiong. Father and son gazed at each other for a long moment, but Zhuang Qiong turned his face away, refusing to cooperate. I wasn't in a hurry. I simply pulled a small knife from my sleeve. Zhuang Qiong, do you know why you lost? You discovered Yun Yao's true identity far too late. And you placed far too much trust in her loyalty. Did you truly believe that a single child would make her wholeheartedly devoted to you? Not everyone is like you, or like your parents, who cherish their children above all else. Yun Yao is nothing but a troublemaker, for wealth and prestige. She straddles the fence, playing both sides like a double agent. How could such a person ever be trusted? How did you know Yun Yao betrayed Zhou Yu and Shuo? Zhuang Qiong couldn't fathom it. And how did you inform him? Every move you made was under my watch, the day I entered the palace. His men questioned me about why I didn't keep our July 19th appointment. Who tipped him off? Under your tight surveillance, only Yun Yao could have reached me, yet she never informed me. When a puppet develops its own thoughts, that's the beginning of betrayal. Zhou Yuanshua understood this principle far better than I did. When I told his men I knew nothing of the 19th of July, he understood the message the moment it reached his ears. What followed was feigning ignorance while playing along with Zhuang Qiong and Yun Yao's schemes, ultimately ensnaring them all. You were pretending all along, playing dumb before me, feigning confusion before Yun Yao, acting deeply devoted before Zhou Yuanshua. You did this deliberately. Is that right? Zhuang Qiong roared at me. I drew my small knife across Xianer's wrist. No need for further explanation, I wasn't here to answer questions. Xianer immediately wailed in pain. Zhuang Qiong whipped his head around. I held Xianer's hand expressionlessly as a bead of blood dripped from his small palm, splattering onto Zhuang Qiong's face. From this moment on, every tea break, this child will bear another scar. When his blood runs dry, the Zhuang lineage will be extinguished. Think carefully, is Zhou Yuanshuo's life worth sealing your family's fate? Zhuang Qiong glared at me, his eyes bloodshot, breathing heavy and rapid like a cornered beast. That night, had done the same, used Ying Ying's blood to force me into submission. A devil like Zhou Yuanshuo, how could he be worth you going this far? Zhuang Qiong practically ground the words out between clenched teeth. I gave no answer, flipping Xianer's palm over and slashing again. To the world, Yueling might be a monster and Zhuang Qiong a saint, but to me, he was the one who truly severed the watery vines dragging me to the lake's depths. In those suffocating days, Yueling was my oxygen. Soon, Xianer's hand was stained crimson. Zhuang Qiong, tears streaming down his face, gritted his teeth and spat. Enough. He revealed the antidote formula to me. Then, suddenly, he burst into laughter. You and him, it won't end well. Saving him, you'll regret it. Seeing my indifference, he laid it out plainly. Princess, you knew Yueling was Zhou Yuanshua from the very first moment you saw him, didn't you? I didn't deny it. Zhou Yuanshua bore a black moon on his shoulder. I wasn't blind, how could I not recognize his identity when we were naked together? You've been using him from the start. You made him fall for you, ensuring our alliance could never be. Right. Moonlight streamed through the iron bars, illuminating Zhuang Qiong's bitter defiance. He laughed maniacally, asking, aren't you curious how he knew you knew his identity? That first night you were with him, you called out his name. You didn't know, did you? Yun Yao said Zhou Yuanshua grew curious about you. He wanted to see what you were up to. Now he knows. Do you think someone like him would willingly be used? He won't let you off the hook. I blinked and laughed along. Suddenly, Zhuang Qiong seemed rather pitiful. You might not believe this, General. He froze when I called him General. You've killed me 7 times already. Be fire, poisoned wine, swords, clubs. This is the first time I've managed to fight back. My life, from the very beginning, had been an endless escape game. Heaven gave me nothing. I was defenseless, unable to fight back or evade. It toyed with me like a fish out of water, but it forgot to erase my memories. Coincidentally, the most crucial thing in any game is accumulating experience. One day, it suddenly clicked. Though I couldn't defeat Zhuang Qiong, someone in this world surely could. So I set my sights on Zhou Yuanshua. The plan unfolded step by step. I reasoned that if I couldn't best Zhuang Qiong in this lifetime, I had the next, and the next after that. One day, he would fall by my hand, and from that day forward, I would finally be the cat, and he the mouse. As for how Zhou Yuanshua knew I recognized his identity from the start, well, it was because of his name. I deliberately called it out for him to hear. I smiled at Zhuang Qiong. Under his incredulous gaze, I explained. After all, Someone once said love begins with curiosity. A man like Zhou Yuan Shuo, once he falls in love, does so with unwavering devotion. I know his future is bright, while I shall stand upon his shoulders, overlooking the mortal world. Friends, allow me to reintroduce myself. I am the doomed princess of a fallen kingdom, currently clinging to life by a thread, about to embark on a love conquest. My target is the mad King Zhou Yuanshu, a man who murdered his father, killed his mother, and slaughtered his brothers. His character sounds utterly unreliable, but what does it matter? My life is an endless looping game. If I lose this round, they'll simply win back in the next. The story ends here. Thank you for watching. The next chapter promises even greater excitement.